Beyond the fiction, on a quiet English estate surrounded by rolling hills and ancient trees stands a house the world thinks it already knows. Millions recognize its silhouette as Downton Abbey, a symbol of elegance, tradition, and aristocratic drama. But this is no television set. This is Highclere Castle, a real home with real power, real privilege, and real consequences. Behind the polished halls and sweeping staircases lies a story far richer and far more complex than fiction ever showed. Because Downton gives you the romance, Highclere gives you the structure, the systems that made grandeur feel effortless, the people who kept it running, and the historical forces that nearly erased it. Tonight, we step beyond the screen and uncover the real Downton. And as we do, notice something. This castle wasn't built to look beautiful on camera. It was built to make authority feel natural, as if it belonged to the land itself. An English dynasty, the Carnarvon line. Highclere Castle has been home to the Earls of Carnarvon for more than 3 centuries. This was not simply a residence. It was a symbol of land, lineage, and authority. In Britain, aristocratic power was built not only on money, but on continuity. Titles passed through generations. Estates were preserved as proof of permanence. A family didn't just own a home, they owned a place in the country's social architecture. To understand why that mattered, you have to understand the older Britain behind the polished rooms. For centuries, land was the true currency. Land meant food. Land meant tenants. Land meant votes, influence, and a kind of authority that could feel as solid as stone. A great house sat at the center of that system like a crown. It wasn't only where a family lived, it was where a region was managed. And remember, a great house was never only about the rooms inside, it was about the world outside. Estates like Highclere functioned like small kingdoms. Fields were worked, woodland was managed. Tenant farms paid rent. Local jobs, and from gardeners to gamekeepers, depended on the estate's rhythms. That relationship could feel paternal, protective, and also unequal, because the estate decided who stayed, who left, who prospered, who struggled. Even charity could reinforce the hierarchy. Help given from above, gratitude expected from below. This is why the house matters historically. It was not a private bubble floating above society. It was a governing center, shaping lives through land, employment, and influence. So when we talk about the decline of great houses, we're not only talking about architecture, we're talking about a whole system losing its authority. Highclere's story stretches back to the 17th century when the estate belonged to the Herbert family, a dynasty intertwined with politics, court influence, and the slow machinery of empire. Over time, the house changed. It expanded. It was reshaped. It was rebuilt. Not because the family needed more shelter, but because the estate needed to express its rank. Here is the subtle truth. Aristocratic architecture is never neutral. A new wing is an announcement. A grander facade is a declaration. A taller tower is a way of saying, from a distance, we are still here. The version of Highclere we recognize today was transformed in the 19th century when it was redesigned in a grand Jacobean style, an English fantasy of Renaissance pride and medieval permanence. Towers, ornament, a skyline meant to read as ancient, even when many parts were newly created. That is the first illusion of aristocracy, the illusion of timelessness. A castle is not only a building, it is a statement that a family's place in the world has always existed and always will. But timelessness has a price, because every generation inherits not just the beauty, but the obligation. Roofs need repair, stone needs care, paint fades, gardens require constant hands, and the larger the house becomes, the louder the burden grows. So even at its most confident, Highclere carries pressure in its walls. The pressure to preserve reputation, to host the right people, to marry well, to maintain tradition, and to make tradition look effortless. Because a house like this doesn't merely shelter history, it must perform it. Upstairs and downstairs, 2 worlds, 1 house. Life at Highclere followed a strict rhythm. Upstairs lived the family, surrounded by luxury, ceremony, and expectation. Downstairs worked the staff, cooks, maids, footmen, gardeners, whose labor kept the illusion alive. These worlds rarely crossed. They moved in parallel, connected by corridors and staircases never meant to be seen. The grand staircase is famous, but the service staircase is the real spine of the house. A great house is like a stage. Upstairs is where the story's performed. Downstairs is where the performance is made possible. Think of a morning in a castle like this. Before the family appears, the house is already awake. Fires are tended, floors are swept and polished, water is carried, breakfast is timed. A room is not simply clean, It is reset, restored to an ideal version of itself. And because aristocratic life ran on ritual, the details mattered. A napkin folded precisely, a coat brushed, a vase turned so the flowers faced the room. A bell answered quickly enough that the person ringing it never feels the gap between desire and fulfillment. And then there are the rituals that gave these rooms their meaning. In a great house, a dinner is never only a meal, it is choreography. Guests arrive in stages. Introductions happen with precision. A drawing room gathers conversation like a warm-up act. Then the bell, the movement, the transition, as if the entire house inhales before the doors open to the dining room. Seating is not casual. It is a map. Who sits close to the host is a message. Who is placed far away is also a message. And the staff move through it all like silent punctuation, appearing, disappearing, never interrupting the performance. Even entertainment is structured. A piano piece, a reading, a walk through the grounds the next morning. The estate itself becomes part of the schedule, because in the aristocratic world, land is not scenery, land is identity. And outside, the grounds continued the message. A drive through trees is not simply a road, it is an approach, an entrance designed to slow you down and prepare your mind. Lawns are kept wide and calm like velvet. Hedges are clipped into order. Views are framed so that nature looks composed. Even the countryside becomes curated, because the estate is telling you, quietly, that this land has been managed for generations. To walk those paths as a guest is to feel the illusion of stability, but to maintain those paths is constant work. Season after season, weather after weather, the grounds must be corrected back into beauty. And consider the lives of the staff themselves. On television, servants have scenes, dialogue, arcs. In reality, many had routines and limits that shaped entire lifetimes. A maid's day could begin before sunrise. A footman's posture was trained into him. A cook carried responsibility that could ruin a reputation if it went wrong. And privacy was rare. Staff often lived on site, in tighter rooms, under stricter rules, with less freedom to leave. But there was pride too. Skill, mastery, professional identity. Because to run a great house well was to be part of an invisible excellence, a standard so high that guests rarely noticed it at all. When luxury feels natural, it's because someone made perfect look ordinary. Service here was not temporary work. It was a profession, often a lifetime. Staff were trained to disappear in plain sight, to anticipate a need before a word was spoken, to make a room look as if it had never been used, even after an evening of guests, candles, and heavy conversation. And the house itself enforced separation. Public rooms were arranged to impress. Private rooms were arranged to protect the family's privacy. Service spaces were arranged to keep labor invisible, so that comfort could feel effortless. Now imagine what effortless really means in a building this large. It means heat carried through vast halls, laundry moved in endless cycles, meals prepared in kitchens that must feed not only the family, but guests and the invisible army of staff. It means schedules so tight that a single delay can ripple through an entire day. And it means emotional discipline, because servants were expected to be present without being seen, to hear everything and repeat nothing, to make the family's privacy feel protected, even in a house full of people. This is the paradox of aristocratic life. It depends on intimacy, created by distance. The family feels alone, protected, elevated, because someone else lives in the corridors that are never shown. Downton Abbey dramatized this divide. Highclere lived it. War and shock when the old world trembled, then the 20th century arrived, and with it, pressure that no family title could command away. The First World War changed everything, not only for Britain, but for the idea of aristocracy itself. Highclere Castle became a hospital, its halls filled not with parties, but with wounded soldiers. The grand rooms designed for ceremony became spaces for beds, bandages, and the quiet endurance of men returning from trenches. And for the staff, the work shifted from elegance to urgency. Service becomes care, schedules become triage. The house that once hosted the rituals of privilege now hosted the rituals of survival. This is where the story turns, because war does something that society rarely does on its own. It forces classes to collide. It forces people to share space, grief, and responsibility. And once those collisions happen, it becomes harder to pretend the old order is natural. Servants left for the front. Young men who would have carried trays now carried rifles. Women stepped into roles that society had previously denied them. And the rigid order of aristocratic life began to crack, not in one dramatic moment, but in countless small changes. After the war, Britain was different. The economy strained, public expectations changed, politics shifted, and the great houses faced a new reality. Their survival depended not only on tradition, but on adaptation. Because a castle is not only a symbol, it is a machine that consumes fuel, labor, repair, and money every single day. And war had made the costs visible, not only the financial costs, but the human costs. The recognition that behind every elegant hall is a workforce, and that workforce is not endless. The Second World War intensified the pressure, more change, more shortages, more reasons to question whether private palaces could still exist in a modern nation. For families like the Carnarvons, the war years did not only threaten comfort, they threatened the entire logic of their world. From power to preservation, surviving the 20th century after the wars, maintaining Highclere became a challenge that many houses could not overcome. Taxes rose, staff numbers fell. Private wealth no longer guaranteed survival. This is the part of the story most people don't see on screen, because in real life, the drama is not always a scandal. Sometimes the drama is a bill, a roof leak that spreads slowly through old beams, a boiler that fails in winter. A house like Highclere requires constant maintenance. And maintenance is not romantic. It is scaffolding. It is paint and plaster. It is budgets and compromises. Across Britain, many great houses were abandoned, sold, or demolished. Some were broken into apartments. Some were stripped of art and furniture, and some simply disappeared, as if an entire social world could be quietly erased. Highclere survived, but only by adapting. Its role shifted from private stronghold to cultural heritage. Opening its doors was not surrender, it was survival. But survival is rarely one big decision. It is 1,000 small ones. What do we keep? What do we restore? What can we afford to delay? A castle forces you to think like a curator and an engineer at the same time. Now let's slow the pace and step into the castle as a guest would. Because the most persuasive thing about a house like Highclere is not any single object. It is sequence. The way one room prepares you for the next. You enter and the ceiling rises. The air feels cooler. The floors are harder. The echoes longer. You don't need anyone to tell you to speak more quietly. The building suggests it. The saloon, one of the grandest rooms, is designed as a kind of indoor cathedral. Light pours down from above. Portraits and ornaments surround you like evidence. Evidence that this family has existed long enough to be painted, recorded, and displayed. And then the library. Rows of books are not only for reading, they are for presence. They tell you that culture lives here, that the family is not only rich but civilized. In aristocratic language, knowledge becomes decoration. Even the sitting rooms feel staged, a chair placed at an angle as if someone just stood up. A table prepared for tea, a window framing fields like a landscape painting. The house turns the outside world into part of its interior design. This is how power becomes comfortable. It surrounds itself with beauty until beauty feels normal. And when beauty feels normal, hierarchy feels normal too. Because preservation is not a single act. It is a long negotiation with weather, with materials, with budgets, and with time. Old rooms swallow warmth. Damp creeps into stone. Wood expands and contracts with seasons, and every solution must respect the building's age, because a careless upgrade can cause damage that takes years to reverse. So preservation becomes a balancing act. Modern safety, modern comfort, modern visitor needs, all woven into walls built for another century. To keep it standing, someone must constantly listen to the building, the quiet drip of water, the hairline crack in plaster, the draft that signals a failing seal. To survive, a great house must become useful again. Not only to the family who owns it, but to the public who can sustain it. That is the second illusion of aristocracy, the illusion that a house survives simply because it is important. In truth, it survives because someone pays for it again and again, and because the story is told well enough that people want to keep hearing it. And when visitors arrive, the meaning of the building changes. A private world becomes a shared one. The house becomes not only a home, but a narrative, a place where people come to feel history as atmosphere. Beyond Downton, Tutankhamun, fame, and a second life. Highclere's story does not only belong to England. In the early 20th century, the Carnarvon name became tied to one of the most famous discoveries in modern history. The 5th Earl of Carnarvon, fascinated by archaeology, financed excavations in Egypt. For years, the work was uncertain. Long seasons of heat, sand, and expense. Until in 1922, the team led by Howard Carter found something that seemed almost impossible. The intact tomb of Tutankhamun. Suddenly, the quiet logic of an English estate collided with global headlines. Newspapers around the world printed the story. Curiosity became obsession. In Highclere, this private house in Hampshire, gained a connection to a moment that reshaped our imagination of ancient history. It's a strange symmetry, because aristocracy and archaeology share an idea, the idea that the past can be collected, preserved, displayed. Inside a great house, history becomes decor. Portraits, relics, furniture, libraries, evidence of lineage. In Egypt, the past was buried, waiting, and when it was opened, it became spectacle and responsibility all at once. This connection adds another layer to Highclere's identity. It wasn't only a home, it was a platform, a place from which the family could step into the wider world, shape stories, and be shaped by them. Then decades later, Downton Abbey arrived, and once again, Highclere became famous through narrative. Not through excavation this time, but through television. A fictional story gave the real building another public life. And this second life is not abstract, it is practical. Film and television do something unusual to great houses. They turn private architecture into a public brand. When a location becomes iconic, it attracts visitors, events, and attention that can fund restoration. Ticket sales become roof repairs. A gift shop becomes new paint. A cafe becomes heating. It's an irony the old aristocratic world could never have predicted. A house built to separate classes survives by welcoming crowds. A building designed for exclusivity depends on accessibility, and even that new system has its own choreography. Timed entries, roped pathways, rooms protected behind barriers, visitors moving like a slow river through spaces once reserved for a few. The castle becomes a negotiation between authenticity and preservation. Let people close enough to feel the magic, but not so close that the building is damaged by the very love that keeps it alive. And this is where fiction meets reality in a powerful way. Because the true tension in Downton is not romance, it is transition, a world trying to remain permanent, while history insists on moving forward. Downton turns the upstairs-downstairs system into characters. Highclere reveals it as structure, a structure built into architecture, into schedules, and into the very design of doors and corridors. Highclere was never just a backdrop. It was a witness to power, to decline, to reinvention. And in the age of media, newspapers, film, television, it became something else too. A symbol people could enter, not only physically through its doors, but emotionally through the fantasy of what those doors represent. Today, Highclere Castle stands as both home and heritage, a place where the past is preserved, not frozen. Visitors walk the same halls where history unfolded. They admire the craftsmanship, the room, the views. But if you look closely, you also see the cost, not only in money, but in effort, because grandeur is never effortless. It is thousands of small tasks repeated until luxury feels natural. And that is the hidden truth behind every great house. In America, in Britain, anywhere a private world was built to feel permanent. And today, as visitors move through these rooms, something subtle happens. People don't only look at the castle, they measure themselves against it. Some feel nostalgia for a world that seems ordered, beautiful, slower. Some feel discomfort because they can see the inequality inside the elegance. Most feel both at once. That mixed feeling is the real legacy of places like Highclere. They are not simple monuments to taste. They are complicated evidence of how societies organize power and how power tries to make itself look permanent. And if there is one lesson in that evidence, it is this: no system lasts forever, but the buildings remain long enough to remind us what we once believed. And here is where the story becomes almost philosophical, because a castle is built to freeze a moment in time. It tries to capture an era's confidence, but the 20th century proved how quickly the rules can change. New industries rise, old wealth is tested, governments reshape tax systems, labor becomes more visible, more organized, more protected. In that new reality, great houses begin to feel like questions. What does it mean to build a private world when the public world is changing? What does it mean to inherit privilege when privilege no longer looks inevitable? And yet, preservation is also a kind of responsibility, because buildings like this are not just about one family. They are evidence, proof of what was valued, what was possible, and what was accepted. To preserve Highclere is to preserve the beauty and the complexity, the craftsmanship and the inequality, the romance of candlelight, and the machinery of staff and schedule behind it. That is why these places endure in our imagination. They are not only rich houses, they are mirrors, reflecting what a society once wanted to be. The Real Downton is not a story of perfection. It is a story of endurance, a house that survived because it adapted, because it found new meaning, because the story kept being told. And standing here, with the English countryside stretching beyond the windows, it's impossible not to feel the contradiction. Highclere was built as proof of permanence, yet it survives now as proof of change, a reminder that every era believes it is the final chapter, until history turns the page. This is Grand House Archives. Subscribe for the next video, and join us as we continue exploring the greatest houses ever built.